Good morning. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on wherever you may be. I am Cheryl Haynes, longtime AFMA member, and I'm thrilled to be here today and to get this opportunity to talk to you about the ABFM and focus a little bit on the ITE. I'm going to go through my slides. Some of them break the rules about too much information on the slides, but I would want these to be a reference guide for those of you who may need it, and I'll certainly send them to everybody when we've completed this. So like I say, so forgive me if there's too much information. It seems like it's a little bit easier in the virtual world than it is on the big presentation screen. But anyway, my objectives for today, I want everybody to gain confidence in their administrative knowledge and function of their role in in using the ABFM RTM. And I want you to be able to explain the process and the tasks required for the successful administration of the in-training exam. Okay. Next slide. A little bit about me. I see a lot of familiar names, but just in case, I've been working in graduate medical education since 1999. And yeah, okay, if some of you are not, weren't born then, I get it. But I started out as a program coordinator in the CME and faculty development world. Working specifically with family medicine residency faculty. So that was my intro. Went from there to being a coordinator in a large academic center with multiple programs, and then due to a transfer of my husband's job, moved to a single institutions community-based program where I was the only game in town and was the residency manager there till 21. I left active program administration the end of 21 and have been working as a GME consultant and educator. It started the education part prior to leaving the program. So I've been doing that since 2020. I had the honor and the privilege of being on the AFMA board from 2014 to 2021. There was a brief break in there. I did a 5-year term, and then not long after I left, we had a board member who had to resign, and they asked me to come back and fill in that slot, which I jumped at the opportunity to do, and left there in 21 as well. My passion is in coordinator education, their professional development, and their well-being. And so I'm thrilled to have this opportunity to share my experience with you about the ABFM RTM and the in-training exam. So let's get started. And again, this is a basic, some of you are going to know this and it's going, yeah, get you next slide. But for those that don't, I want to make sure we cover the groundwork and that everybody's on the same page and understands. So the American Board of Family Medicine is the certifying body for all things family medicine as far as our residents and family physicians are concerned. That is their certifying body and governing them for their lifetime as practicing family physicians. Again, I'm going to share the slide set with you so you'll have these links. Want to make sure back in the day, I kept forgetting to include in the abfm.org, and I would always go to the American Board of Financial Management or something along those lines. So been there, done that. I did it so much that it would automatically saved in my favorites back then. So anyway, so it's the ABFM. And then I also shared the certification requirements and the link to the RTM itself, as long as the help desk, as well as the help desk. So again, these are just some good references for you to get started. If you don't have all these bookmarked on your desktops, I certainly would, because you will use them a lot. Okay. And again, as far as too much on the screen, but I wanted to just share with you what the certification entry process page looks like. This is where it spells out what is required for residents to become certified in family medicine. It talks about their KSAs, their knowledge and skills and assessment requirements, their 50-point requirements. Hopefully all of you are well familiar with that. But this is the page, and like I say, you want to go to the resident certification entry process page, and this will go through and explain to you and give you the list of everything that is required that your residents have to meet in order to be board eligible when they complete residency and want that certification. I'm not into reading slides and reading websites to you, so I wasn't going to get into the specifics of this, but just know that it's based on a point system, and your residents have to have 50 points based on the different categories they have, and this spells that out. But they'll have to have 50 points in order to be eligible to become, to take the exam and one more step towards board certification. The one thing that you as a coordinator need to understand and make sure you're comfortable with is it is the RTM itself, getting access to it. You should have your username and password for the RTM, and want to show you what that looks like as well. This is the homepage to the RTM, the Resident Training Management System with the ABFM. This is your go-to place, just like WebAds is for all things ACGME, for board certification, for everything for your residents. This is your homepage where everything is based from. And so I'm just going to briefly go through each section for you to make sure everybody understands what they are. I'll spend a little bit more time on some things than others. But add a resident and your resident profile are the first steps. What I typically do, and again, I'm going to share best practices based on my experience. We've got a lot of other experienced people on here that if they need to jump in with other ideas, happy to do that. We do have question and answers at the end that we can further discuss as well. In establishing your residents' profiles, they've matched with you, they're joining your program, they've joined your program, you got to set up their profiles in the RTM. And that is, ironically, one of the first steps is their test scores. After you get them enter their name, and basic information about them. One of the first questions you're going to get asked is, have they done any training in another program? As you know, sometimes that we're used to getting residents, interns straight out of medical school, and that may be the standard, but every once in a while you're going to take a transfer from another program. Somebody that has realized that whatever specialty they were training in was not for them and want to transfer to family medicine. And so they want to make sure, that's one of the first questions, to make sure they have the right information, because there will be some additional information if they have in fact transferred from another program, but we'll get into that as we go along. So they do want you to enter their USMLE or COMLEX scores. So whether they're a DO or an MD, the USMLE scores are important for they have a tool that helps you predict if your resident is going to pass their certification exam at the end. And it's all based on starting with those USMLE scores as their medical students and their ITEs through residency. So it's important that you enter those for them. But as far as the resident information itself, you need their full name. Be very careful when you are entering this. It's just like with WebAds. You may have a Jonathan Smith who goes by John Smith and says he's John Smith, but you make sure you get Jonathan in this, because this is their forever record that's going to certify them as a family physician. So make sure you have the complete full name of your residents in their ABFM profiles. Their degree, obviously, their dates of birth, and their last four numbers of their social security numbers is what you're going to have to set them up and establish their profile. And you're going to have an email address. And you see, I've got a few things asterisked on here. I'm going to talk to you about some lessons learned in the next slide. But these are the things that you have to establish your resident, their profile, and get them set up in the ABFM. Then their training type. Again, if they have been in the previous program, you're going to make sure that you have that information. You're going to have to put in their program, that program name, the ACGME ID number, and the year that you're starting them. Some of them may have a complete year elsewhere that you're going to start them as a PGY2 in your program. Everybody else, you're fresh out of medical school. Residents are going to start as PGY1s. The dates of your training, and if they are an advanced credit resident, how much credit you are giving them. And again, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in my lessons learned slide in a minute. That you have to have their undergrad training. So where did they go to medical school? Where was it located? There's always lists. It's a drop down of hundreds, it seems, of names of medical schools, and it's important. You know, so many, particularly in the osteopathic world, there's so many different campuses and different names. And so it's really crucial that you make sure that you select the correct name for the medical school from which they graduate. And then, of course, the graduation date. That graduation date is important for a lot of different things that you'll use as a coordinator. Sometimes some places ask for the specific date that they graduated, and that's always a wild card. Some people go by the date on the diploma, whatever the med school verifies, but for most parts, all they're interested in is the month and the year. But every once in a while, you will find some things that want a date. And it's really, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I don't think it's that big a deal as long as, whether, we typically put the first of the month, so if they graduated in May, I put May 1st, just for those that have to have a date. Okay. So don't sweat the small stuff if you don't have the specific date, because most things go on the month and year that they graduated from medical school. And then updating your status, each year, making sure that there's any changes, you get those updated. And so that that RTM, that profile in RTM is always accurate, and how much credit they've gotten for each year of training. Okay. Sorry. Now, my lessons learned. Let's talk about the resident email address. Some residents like to use their personal email address. Some of them, some programs require that you use an institutional address. In my experience, we always required them while they were in residency to use their institutional address. That way we could assist with those when they got themselves, forgot their passwords, things like that. But the personal address comes in really handy later in this presentation and another lesson learned. But so however you do it, I always set up their profiles for them just to make sure that they were accurate. And I always use the institutional address so that we had some ability to track and control if there was ever an issue. Their training record, again, if you accept a resident with advanced credit, you have to get that documented and approved through the ABFM before they start. So you can't, your program director can't decide 6 months after they've started, oh, I am going to give them credit for that rotation, or I'm realize they don't have enough training or enough experience, so I'm going to take that back and they're going to have to do this rotation. That has to be decided on and documented with the ABFM before they start into your program. And that's a really important thing for you to remember. The years and dates and training. A lot of us go on and enter all 3 years based on if they start July 1st and end on June 30th of each year. We go on and put those dates in the beginning to set up their their profile, and that's perfectly fine. It's not going to matter so much specifically until the end when they're certified, the exact dates. But you want to make sure if you go ahead and put the standard dates in that if there is anything that changes that, let's say they have to go on remediation, they struggle a little bit and they don't get to promote when they were supposed to, or there has to be an extended leave of absence or whatever the case may be, you have to go into the ABFM and report that and change those dates. So it's critical that you have the exact dates for your trainees. Okay. And another lesson learned, get a copy, and this is outside the ABFM, but I just had to throw it in there. Make sure that you get a copy of the diploma itself. We so focus for the RTM on just getting the date of graduation, but I learned the hard way that you have to actually have a copy of the diploma. I worked for my last 10 years in North Carolina, where for licensing purposes, the med schools just filled out a form that said that they were going to graduate on this date, and that's what I had in their records, and all was good. And that was peachy keen until we got a CMS audit. And one of the first things that the auditor asked for was a copy of the students or the resident's medical school diploma. And I did not have them. So I was embarrassed. So it was bad. We had to track down people and get them. And we had a resident bring in his framed 11 by 14, diploma. And we spent a lot of time trying to get it narrowed down so that we could get a copy of it. We did, but save yourself a hassle and a lot of embarrassment, and make sure that you get a copy of their diploma. And having spent a lot of time trying to copy that huge framed diploma, I would put it in your onboarding checklist, just a step to letting them know they don't even have them yet, but just make sure they know before they have them framed that you're going to need a copy of it. And so just put that out there so they know up front, okay? Because you are going to have it. Okay? So the next section down on the homepage for RTM is the reports. This is where you're going to get a lot of your information. I listed them here for you. Some of the important ones for you, that examination performance data, that's where you're going to get your board pass rate information, and you're going to need that for your APE. Your program roster is just that. It lists all your residents. So it's a quick check of, did you get everybody in there that you're supposed to have? Residency completion verification report. It's just verifying, it's your list of who has completed your program. There's some historical data. You can see where your residents are in that 50-point process of what their status is on some of the knowledge and skills assessments that they're doing. Resident IDs and passwords report, God love them. It'll tell you, when you look at the report, it'll tell you if your resident has signed in. And it's funny when I find a second-year resident who reaches out and says, I don't know my ID number. I can't, can you help me with my password? And I go look at this report and realize that he's already into his second year and hasn't even logged in to the ABFM yet. Once they log in, it's a little bit more of a challenge that can tell you, the report will then tell you the last date that they did. But by having that institutional, having the rule that you use the institutional email address, this makes this process easier if you have to go help them get back in. Okay. Their certification activity status report. This is something you need to monitor and make sure that they are getting those points. Lesson learned. I had a third-year resident come to me in late December of his third year, frustrated and furious that the ABFM system was not working because he was not allowed to register for his certification exam in April. And we got to looking, and lo and behold, he only had like 20 of his 50 points in December of his third year. And so that's when I had to tell him, you've got to have the points to be able to, they won't let you register for the certification exam if you haven't met that 50 points. And so, most of our policies are based on the actions of somebody. And so from that point on, we changed our policy, and we required all of our residents, they were told day one that they had to complete their 50 points by December 31st of their third year, so that we didn't have anybody, because this young man, he ended up, because one of the PI requirement takes time. It takes some data and studying over at least a 10-day period. So it's not like he could just sit down and cram and get them done. So he missed the deadline for applying for his exam. So there was a late fee. And of course, the program, while we paid for his certification exam fee, we certainly didn't pay for his late fee, because he put off at getting done what he was supposed to get done. So protection for us, we created our policy that they had to have that 50 points completed by December 31st of their third year, so that they would be ready and able to schedule that exam come January 1st. Again, there's an activity report, there's a status report and a completion report, so you can see who's logged in, who's gotten started on some, who's completed them. But that 50 points is in that activity completion report. And on their profile itself, when you open up the individual profile, it'll be there. They have green check marks, and it'll show you green check marks that yes, this person has completed this requirement. And so you'll be able to do a spot check and monitor them. Okay. The contact information, the program information that they ask for is just making sure that your program address is accurate. Every once in a while, we have had programs that have had to move due to mergers and acquisitions and things like that. So make sure that if your program address changes, you update it in the RTM. And then your faculty and staff list, make sure that you and any staff that you want to have access to the ABFM RTM are listed in there, and your faculty as well. So it's not like the ACGME web ads where you have to have all the details. They're just looking for names and positions, the fact that they're a faculty member. And from a coordinator standpoint, what your position is. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about the ITE, which is what we promised we would have some more detailed information. On the in-training exam from the homepage, there's the registration, and they want you, there's steps involved in registration. That's a time they want you to update your contact information. There is an ITE administration manual. I probably read it my first year 20 years ago, but I don't think I read it since then. So I'll just be upfront and honest with you on that one. But it does give you the dates and things like that. So as far as technical issues, things like that, probably I may have just gotten lucky that I hadn't read it and never had any issues. So, but there is an ITE administration manual that does answer the majority of questions. So before you reach out to the ABFM and ask questions that are answered in there, good idea that you double check and check that manual. It does give you your important dates, so by when you have to register, those types of things, when the date is administered, when the exam can be administered. Gives you your roster of residents based on your what you've got listed, the profiles that you have in the RTM. Sometimes that's a good opportunity, a quick check that you realize that you forgot to, promote somebody the second year if you didn't have already the dates in already, depending on how you do it. But this is a good double check to make sure you've got everybody entered exactly like they should be. And then, of course, it's not a free thing. There's a $50 per resident charge to take the exam. And they do give you the opportunity to pay by credit card online through the RTM. And if you don't have that ability through your programs or through your institutions, then of course checks can be sent to the ABFM. But I would, if you're in a situation where somebody else has to write a check and you're at your finance or accounts payables office's discretion, I would do that sooner rather than later. So you make sure you got everything done in time. Okay. Registration begins usually about the last week of July and closes the end of September. So there's plenty of time to get it done. But again, I always made a point of just doing it immediately. It's done, and I didn't have to worry about it. The exam itself is usually administered the third week of October. Again, that manual is going to give you the specific dates that it's available. It's your discretion, or it's the program director's discretion of when and how in those timeframes, in those dates that you administer the exam. So I'll talk a little bit in a minute about some of the ins and outs of the scheduling. The results of your ITE exam are going to be available early December. It used to happen right after Christmas, but they've advanced it, and I think they came out early the first week of December, is what I heard. They are emailed to residents directly, so it's a good test to see if the residents are checking their emails, which we all know that's an issue for a lot. But you will have, and they tell on themselves. That's a great thing about residents. They tell on themselves all the time. You have a resident come in and say, "Oh, so and so got their email. They got their ITE results, and I didn't." Well, that one checked his email. You didn't. So thank you for telling on yourself. But the results are also available in the RTM, so you always have access to them. So when that email comes out that they're available, you can print them. I typically always printed them and sent them to the program director first. Sometimes, I think once in my career, we had a little surprise that needed to be dealt with. The program director preferred to deal with it before anybody else got any other information. And so that's why I always go to the program director first. Before then, I would send them out to the advisors so that they would have those. And of course, I let the residents know that I had them and that I was happy to print them for them if they needed. And those are, just so you'll know, they are password protected. And I'm going to show you in just a second how you get that password if you do not know. Okay, so those are the basics of administering and getting the results of the in-training exam. So my lessons learned. Again, did this for 20 years, so I've seen a little bit of everything. And I cannot stress enough, plan ahead, plan ahead, plan ahead. Okay, who's taking it? When are they taking it? How are they being covered? What's the schedule? Some of the larger academic centers that have lots of people and can get coverage for their services, it's no big deal. My first program, everybody took it on the same day at the same time, one and done. Cool. My second program, where we were a single institution community program, where we were the only program and our inpatient service was handled only by us and our faculty. Somebody had to be in the hospital at all times, so that took a little creative scheduling. We had a night float system, so the way we worked it out is on Monday of the week that the exam was available, half of our inpatient team and our night float people took the exam from 3 till 7 in the evening. And the inpatient team, half the inpatient team covered the night shift until those residents finished their exam, got something to eat, and could get over. And then on Thursday morning, which that Thursday is traditionally the day of the in-training exam, then the other half of the inpatient team came and took the exam. And those that took it Monday evening, along with the night float team, stayed on Thursday morning until the rest of the team finished their exam and could get over to the hospital. So that's how we did it. Okay, just one way of scheduling. Some programs divide, half do it this day and half do it that day. However you do it is fine. Okay, whatever works best for your program, but you've got to plan ahead and make sure everybody's on the same sheet of music. So the last thing you want to happen is the resident comes to you on you're doing it on Thursday, and the resident calls you Wednesday night or first thing Thursday morning and say, hey, I've got a patient scheduled tomorrow. That's the type of thing you want to make absolutely sure does not happen. So I put, as soon as I do my academic calendar, we use New Innovations. And so when I did the calendar for the year, I put those dates on there so that everybody could see when the in-training exam was. I put both dates and who did it, so that there was no doubt of who was taking the exam and when. Communicate with your ITE department. Again, lesson learned. In my early days, my IT department at the institution picked exam day to update their servers. To say that we had connectivity issues was an understatement. I had some really stressed out residents, and it was just kind of a disaster. So I always make a point in July when I'm planning, or in June when I'm planning my academic year, I always send an email to my IT department and remind them, hey, here's the dates of the exam. Please don't do any updates or do anything that's going to affect bandwidth, whatever the case may be, on our servers. So hopefully a disaster for me that I lived through, I can share that and you won't have to. So make sure you communicate with your IT department, and also make sure that they have somebody on hand in case there are issues, because invariably we all know that happens sometimes. We had a rule, residents were not allowed to take vacation the third week of October until the schedules were done and we made absolutely sure. So if the inpatient team could not take it at all because they either took it on Monday night and covered Thursday, or covered Monday night and took it Thursday morning. So if they were on the inpatient team or the night float team, they absolutely took no vacation during the third week of October. The rest of them, once it was decided and determined when they were taking the exam and their schedules were blocked, if they were taking it Monday evening and wanted to take some vacation later in the week, they could, after everything was covered. That just took a lot of coordination on our part, making sure we had all bases covered. But the handbook, the resident manual, said no vacation the third week of October. Every once in a while you get somebody, so-and-so's getting married that weekend or whatever. And so you work around it. But the priority is the exam gets scheduled, they take the exam, and everything is covered as far as your patients and your clinics are concerned. Okay. The exam has to be proctored for now. I will tell you as I've branched out and doing some consulting with other specialties, there is software out there that some of the other specialties are using that the software itself does the proctoring. So will family medicine move to that in the future? Possible, who knows? But for now, you need to plan on that if somebody physically needs to proctor the exam, and that means you're sitting in the room with them the whole time they're taking the exam. So you're there before they get started and you're there till the last person finishes. Okay. Typically that was always me. But frankly, it was a nice escape for me because typically once we got started, everything was fine. And I have improved my Sudoku score on ITE days in the past. So, I'm doing my job. My job for the day is proctoring the exam. So there I am. So, don't look at it as, oh my God, I've got to do this. No, find the joy, find the upside. You just got to be in the room. Okay. But make sure you got your volume turned off on the phone. Okay. Because I learned that hard way too. Okay. The other things, let's see, there's a systems check that has to be done in advance. The ABFM is going to send you some information. They have to download the browser, all these different things. And you have to make sure that whatever computer, whatever desktop or laptop they're using for taking the exam, that this systems check has to be run on that exact computer. We learned the hard way. We did always have, in addition to having an IT person on hand, we already had always had a couple of extra laptops on hand that the system check had been run, that it was compatible, and that everything had been downloaded in advance, because you just never know what's going to happen. My favorite was the resident showing up with his laptop. He did bring his laptop, but it was dead and he forgot his power cord. So there's always reasons to have extras. Okay. So, and going on and getting those systems checks on them and make sure they're compatible in advance is crucial. Okay. And then lastly, one of the good things, and what I would do on the systems check is I would typically, the 2 didactics days before the exam, I would email everybody and say, hey, bring your laptop in, let's run your systems check. And so I would go into didactics and grab a few laptops and go back and run them and make sure all was good. Or they would stop in my office before and run them. But those are just good opportunities to get those done, so that you don't have to worry that somebody's not going to be able to log in the morning of the exam. Okay. And again, lesson learned. The good news is that in the cases that I have had where they lost connectivity or something happened, there was never a time in my experience where, when they did get logged back in, that the system didn't go to the last question they answered. Because as soon as they lose connectivity, they freak out, think they've lost everything they've done, and oh my God, and sky's fallen. Fortunately, in my experience, that has not been an issue. It has always gone back to where they left off. But I can't promise, obviously, that that's going to be the case. But I do tell the residents that at the beginning of the day, trying to manage some anxiety, because there usually is anxiety that day. Okay, on the day of exam, I always have my residents show up 30 minutes early. Again, I always feed them, have something for them there. I have snacks, coffee, water in the room. I tell them to get there 30 minutes early so everybody can get connected, everybody can whine about the night they had, everybody can do everything they need to do before we settle down and get busy. There is a 15-minute tutorial, particularly for your first years, on how to take the exam and how it all works, that they might want to go through. But again, I want everything done so that when 8 o'clock hits, everybody starts their exam, because that's what we did, 8 to 12. Again, that's when we do it. That's how we did it. But it worked for us. I had extra laptops in the room. I also had disposable earplugs in the room. It's been really interesting over the years. You find out a lot about your residents when they're under a little pressure. And I have heard the words, he's typing too loudly. So it's disturbing me, So earplugs for those that have issues. And again, snacks. I also have their ABFM IDs and their login information readily available. I literally put it on a piece of paper, put their name on it, hand those pieces of paper out as they get started. And that way they've got it right there, because I never rely on somebody to remember a username or an ID number and a password. I have them right there, so we have no reason not to get started. I always make them, there can be nothing on the table in front of them except their laptop. So everything gets put away. I do provide them some scratch paper and pencils, so that, because there is it's always interesting to see after the exam what people write on their scratch paper, but there is some equations and things like that they have to do. So I always have some scratch paper and pencils for them. And absolutely no phones. We've most of the time we collected them, and they got them back when they finished. But we did just have a few years where we just turned phones off and made sure they understood that coverage had been arranged and there was no reason for them to have to take a call about a patient. And we stressed with them in advance that they would not be able to take calls from family members, anything like that, while they were taking the exam. So one of the things you have to remember as a proctor is you are by default saying that everything was legit, that there was no possibility for any inappropriate access to information, those types of things. So I took it very seriously. And so nobody had anything on the table except their laptop and the paper and pencil that I gave them. So that was the way I satisfied myself that they had met, that we were taking it seriously and meeting the requirements. Okay. Becky, I see that there's some chats. There's 3 things in the chat. I can't see that and run these. So is there something I need to stop and do?
So Cynthia said she actually gets a verification from the medical school registrar of the exact dates of the medical school duration in addition to the diploma. So that was just information saying.
Information. Okay. Thank you, Cynthia.
She does get that. And then there's a question, can the ITE be taken on a tablet? The answer to that is yes.
Yes. As long as you run the systems check and as long as it's compatible, absolutely.
And then, do you let your residents use calculators either on their phones or some sort for some of the questions, or an old school calculator?
No. We do not. That's up to your institution or your program director. But again, in my case, if I'm verifying that there was no chance that anything inappropriate took place, that there was no way of accessing any other information while they had the exam, all that, the way I did it for 20 years was nothing. They had absolutely nothing, The new moms with new babies just had to suck it up. I had, I talked to them ahead of time and said, you're not going to be able to check on your baby for 4 hours. Okay. So arrange it for somebody else, get somebody else to cover because you are not going to be able to answer your phone. But yeah, no, they had nothing else besides the paper and pen that I gave them and the laptop, because the laptop, once they start the exam, it locks out everything else. So they can't be going back and forth and accessing other things. And I'm not saying that a resident would cheat, but if it was as the proctor, me saying it was all legit, I didn't take any chances. Okay. And I told them we were very fortunate in where they took the exam. There were restrooms immediately outside the door. I had food and water and coffee inside the room. I told them that they could raise their hand and be excused to go to the restroom, but I made sure they took nothing with them and only one person can be out of the room at one time.
That's exactly
how I did it. And that's what I told them from the beginning, so.
Yep. That's what we did too.
Yeah. I may tell you to wait a minute until somebody gets back. But again, my reputation, my integrity, I took the confidentiality and the no cheating very seriously. Okay. So that's my day of on the exam. Okay. Now then, back to the RTM. After you get your results and are going to get into some analysis, you check that block. And this is where you're going to get your exam, your results, copy of your exam, all the different things that they provide. If you notice my top blue arrow, you can go back. The current year is always on top, but you can click the down arrow and pull previous years. So if you're doing a study, a program improvement type thing, you can always go back and look at previous, but it always defaults to the current year. So as long as you don't change that, it'll be on the current year. Your exam results password, it's listed right there. Obviously, one of the coordinators shared with me, gave me access to their RTM. And so that's why I'm able to do these screenshots, but that's why I've blacked out specific information. Like I say, you can get everything. There's a handbook on how it's scored. It's a little crazy to me, but anyway, I will tell you that after the exam is administered and everybody has completed it, the ABFM does go back and look if they have questions that everybody missed or an unusually high number of people missed. They often will throw out certain questions. So whereas they start with, is it 240 questions, I think, that are on the exam, the results may be based on less because they make the decision to throw out some questions based on performance. But anyway, but your scale graph, I'm going to show you a few of these as we go through here, but just know that when it comes to getting your results and doing your analysis, this is the page and this is what it looks like. You can get your score data. They give you, one of the cool things is the performance by clinical category and by organ systems. I'm doing another webinar later this month about really getting into the details of this for program improvement. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it now, but just know that that's available to you. And so you can see how your program did in comparison to other residencies, other programs. Okay. This is that mean scale score graph. You'll get it each year so that you can see the blue is your program and the orange is the national average. This program that shared with me their information is doing really well. I can tell you from experience, it's not always that way, but it's a great tool for you as far as program improvement based on your overall results. But this is the scale that you get so that you can see how your program does in comparison to all the other programs nationally. This is what the individual exam scores look like. You can see the mean scaled score in the middle of the page at the top. The mean scaled score for PGY3s in 2023 was a 427. The scaled score for this individual resident was a 500, so you can see why their graph looks so good, and that the resident got all the questions answered in the time frame. One of the things from a program improvement perspective that you want to notice is you'll see it lists their performance by organ systems, or what they call as blueprint category. And it literally shows you how many questions on each exam was in each topic. So when you're looking at didactics, you probably want to focus your didactics more heavily on cardio, musculoskeletal, and respiratory than some of the other things. Okay, so it shows you exactly. It varies a little bit from year to year, but we all know that cardio, MSK, and respiratory are pretty much the bread and butter of family physicians. And so that's why those have higher percentages. So making sure that you are paying attention to that in your curriculum, and particularly your didactics curriculum, is important. Okay. They also have over here, it shows in comparison how this person did, and this mean passing score is here, so you'll know. So obviously, this program did really well. This resident did really well, and the program did really well. Okay, and that is page 1 of the results. Here's page 2 of the results, same person. They just do it by clinical category, but again, as you'll see, it doesn't break down how many questions were on each section. It just provides a different way of looking at the content of the exam. Okay, so that's what results look like. Now, the Examlyzer. This is the fun one. This gives you the ability to go back every year after the dust settled and everybody got their results. Come January, I usually spent some time going through, and I pulled the most missed questions, because you see this one's set up. You can do it by right answers or by wrong answers. And I could tell how many of my residents missed a specific question. And so that, to me, that's an indicator for the program. When a couple of residents miss something, that's something that may be on the resident. When a lot of them miss it, that's probably on the program. Maybe they don't have the content that they need. And so that's why it makes a difference. And so I go back and run those reports and give those to the faculty members so that they can see planning ahead to make sure that they are covering the content that they need to cover. Just like I have put in the wrong email address for the ABFM or web address for the ABFM a lot, I often have problems with changing this first question. The first radio dot buttons is your program or all programs. Can't tell you the number of times I've run a report on all programs, and who cares? I forget to switch that to I just want information. I want the most missed questions on my program. So make sure that you select, each box. It lets you change the year. So if you have a resident who's suddenly in trouble, you can go back to previous years and look at their results per category and questions from previous years. You can sort it by all your residents, by just your PJY1s, just your 2s, whatever. You can do up to, I believe it's 75%. If you want to know if 75% of your residents missed the question, you can filter for that as well. So it's really a cool tool to help you in determining how your program is doing as a whole, and how your residents are performing accordingly. Okay. Okay. One of the things that I have noticed, particularly since I've been on the consulting side, is an overall frustration, mostly with coordinators. And I get asked all the time, how do I get my residents to take this exam seriously? Well, we could talk all day about that, but my experience tells me that it's based on the actions you take, the examples you set or provide. And it's now a requirement. For a long time, it wasn't a requirement, but in the recent changes to the ACGME requirements, it's now required. But by making it so important that residents can't take vacation the week of the exam, by having it on the calendar early, by getting the schedules done and making sure everybody knows when they're taking it and all those, that tells the residents we value that. Okay. From a faculty perspective, we always from August and September and early October, we did some board review. And that's when they went back and looked at last year's most missed questions to see the types of questions that were missed, or the areas that our residents struggled with. And we would have additional study sessions at lunchtime and different times where we would pick, today's going to be cardio. Next week we did respiratory, but we had the faculty focus on the questions and seeing why they might have missed it, because they discussed them. And so one of our faculty members that really gets into it polls them and has them answer right there. And so it's a real-time thing. And that way they can discuss why, if 5 of you answered it this way, why? Take some courage for somebody to speak up and say, I got it wrong because I thought this, but it means great discussion and taking it seriously and making a big deal about the ITE. Okay. And obviously the thing they forget to look at is what it means for each resident as far as how they can benefit from this. Pamela, you got your hand raised.
Yes, ma'am. I was just going to chime in here and add that our program in the last probably 7 years started purchasing the AAFP board review course. Mm-hmm. Every single one of our residents, so they have it individually, and our didactics are strongly heavy with board review. Starting from July through October, most of our didactic sessions are board review, and we actually just do those ABFM board review things. So it's been a huge help for us, and we saw a huge increase in scores with our residents by making them do that.
Well, and the other thing that we did along those same lines, we always have journal clubs and grand rounds and, project presentations, things like that. We didn't do any of that until after the exam. So didactics July through the 3rd week of October were core clinical topics. And then in November, we started with journal clubs and grand rounds and the other things that we typically include. But we really focused our didactics on the core content in hopes of setting our residents up for success. And we had really good performance on our exams, so we felt like it worked for us. Okay, so like I say, we could talk about what it takes to make it taking it seriously. Obviously, your faculty have to take it seriously. Your faculty have to model some good focus. I don't, I just keep hearing, oh, standardized tests don't mean anything anymore, and they're not accurate. And I've heard every excuse in the world, but the bottom line is, I don't care how you feel about it, it's still a requirement. And they need to take it. So why not set them up for success and make your program look good at the same time? Okay. So what do we do with our ITE exam results? Well, obviously, we need to analyze them. You need to analyze them for your individual resident. You need to analyze them by class, because sometimes we change our curriculum. Did we take something out of our standardized curriculum that we realize in the ITE that, oh, this class missed this, we probably shouldn't have taken that out, or, we should have done things differently. And of course, as your program for program development, use those most missed questions and those categories that they provide to you to do a good study on your program and your curriculum. Your ITE results should help you update and drive your residents' individual learning plans. Those are required now, and there's very specific language in the ACGME requirements about what those have to look like. And obviously, if you've got a resident who's struggling in cardiovascular topics, then you better be looking at one of those electives being, and maybe even two of them, in cardiovascular. So, it's all connect the dots and use every tool that you have to make sure you get everything, you provide everything you can to the resident. Okay, it's about resident growth and improvement. Your program evaluation committee should be use the results to help update curriculum, to drive didactics for overall program improvement. And it's a recruiting tool. I was very proud of my program when they were knocking out of the park on scores and so far above the average. That was on all my recruiting materials. Our curriculum is so strong that this is how our residents perform on the in-training exams. It's an easy tool, a great thing to say about your program. If that's not the case, if you can't loud your results to potential applicants, you might want to look at using the results for some program improvement. Okay. Pamela, you're laughing. You got something? No. Okay.
Nothing to me.
Missy was messaging me, and so I was just responding.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, like I say, lots of reasons, lots of things that you can do with your ITE results. So I hope that gives you an overview on how important the in-training exam is and what it can do for your program and for your residents. Next on the homepage of the RTM is the ABFM certification exam. 15 days prior to the completion of their third year, completion of residency, there has to be a verification. There's a special code that's available, and you have to go in and certify that your resident has met all the requirements necessary to graduate and be prepared. You have to verify the qualifications to apply for the exam. So they've got those 50 points. The resident starts that application, but we have to verify everything. And remember that family medicine residency is 3 years at a minimum, and the last 2 have to be in the same program. So make sure if you take those transfer residents that they do the last 2 years of their residency in your program. Okay, National Family Medicine Residency Graduate Survey. The ACGME specifically says, at least in the family medicine requirements, feedback from a program's graduates is vital to assessment of program quality, with the results used in the annual program evaluation. If you have a site visit, they're going to look, show me where you use these for your annual program evaluation. There better be some documentation in your minutes that those were looked at, okay? The Association of Family Medicine Residency Directors, which is AFMA's equivalent for program directors, facilitates the survey. It measures the training programs, the residents' satisfaction with the training, their preparation for practice, and their scope of practice. They're asking them 7 years out, did your program adequately prepare you for what you're doing? Okay. And of course, we want the results to be positive. Okay. Now then, back on that issue of the email address that you have in the resident profile. I apparently have to touch something hot a couple of times before I realize that it was hot and I need to do something different and not touch it next time. Because we were so excited several years ago when the AFMRD decided to do this survey. It's great. We don't have to do them anymore. It's wonderful. One less thing on our plate. We get the first set of results and our program's got nothing. Zero. And I thought, damn residents, you know, they didn't fill it out. Second year came along. I go, nothing. The downfall to using your institutional email addresses in their profiles is that's the email address that those surveys are sent to. So my residents, my graduates had not received the survey for a couple of years. So that one was on me, and that was a hard one to go to the boss and say, hey, just want to let you know there's a reason I screwed up. I don't have the right email addresses in there. So on my graduation checklist, the things I do getting ready for getting the residents out the door, they get not one, but probably 3 emails from me reminding them to be sure and go into their profiles and change their email address to their personal email address, so that they will receive. I don't tell them about the survey. I just say, just so that you stay up to date with everything from the board, maintain your certification, they need an up-to-date email address, and that your institutional one is in there, so you need to change it. And lo and behold, we started getting responses the next year. So like I say, that email address that you have in their profile is important. So if you're going to use your institutional ones while they're in residency, that's great. But you make darn sure you get them changed as they graduate. Otherwise, you get no survey results. And let me assure you, it's kind of embarrassing to tell the boss why there's no results when it's on you. Okay, last section on the RTM homepage is your policies and resources. There's a good video, a slide presentation about the ABFM, what they're about. If you're involved in a part-time, if you've got a part-time residency or a combined residency policy, those are there. That's where you access those. The leave policy, that's been the hot button issue for the last few years. The ABFM and the ACGME have very specific leave policies requiring that they provide more paid vacation time. So the policy is available at this link. It also has some FAQs that are good, that give some situations based on what they've been asked since the start of the policy. But the one thing, the thing that needs to come out of your mouth every time it's brought up is the ABFM policy for leave does not supersede the requirement that they still have to meet the ACGME requirements. And so if they take a leave of absence, they may get paid for it, but if they're short on their numbers or now short on their hours, they're going to have to stick around and extend their residency and get those hours. And that is the biggest source of frustration and confusion and anger on some residents' part. I can't tell you the number of them who've read that policy and said, oh, I don't have to do this. Or, the 40 weeks. I had a resident who say, I'm going to just take the rest of residency off because I've got my numbers. Well, you may have your numbers, but you haven't been in there 40 weeks. So there's any number of possibilities. And we all know residents are sneaky little guys and gals, and they may try to push you a little bit. So be prepared. So make sure that your mantra is always the leave policy. It allows for dealing with hardships, illnesses, family situations, all that. It does not preclude any ACGME requirements in order to graduate from the accredited program. So that's always a source of frustration and some angst and some heated discussions we've had in my program in the past over misunderstanding of that. So make sure you understand that. There is a residence guide to certification. We always print that and give it to the residents in the beginning as part of orientation. They sign for it. That's why they know they have to have their 50 points. And the other things that are required for to be eligible, board eligible. So yeah, it's another thing I just have in their personnel files that they signed, that they had that, they understood and would follow those. It also precludes, and I just noticed that my little no sign is off in this version, but that's supposed to be by, it eliminates the nobody told me. That's my favorite, or my least favorite really, thing for a resident to say to me over the years. Well, nobody told me. I didn't know I had to do that. You know, where did you tell me that? Well, you signed for it in orientation. That's where I told you. Okay. And then the Res PIP program, it's been around for a little while. One of the requirements is for the 50 points is some process improvement studies, and they have some canned ones, some modules in the ABFM system that they can do. But fortunately, several years ago, they expanded that, and now individual programs can use the projects that they are working on that are improving their practices and the health of their patients, that they can use those projects to meet those point requirements. But it does take, if there's an application, it takes some planning and an approval and some reporting. But just know that if you've got a really good system in your program for your residents to study patient improvement, patient safety, and quality improvement, take advantage of the Res PIP program and get credit for it so they don't have to do double work. Okay. The one thing I can tell you, I'm very big on us taking care of each other. That has been, that's what AFMA is all about. But sometimes you do have to reach out. Kathy Botner is the person at the ABFM who knows all. I don't know what they're going to do when she retires, but repeat after me. Kathy Botner is my friend. Do not hesitate to reach out to Kathy if you've got some special circumstance or something that, that you don't know how to handle. Now, let me tell you, you know how you feel like Atlas holding up everything in your program, that you're the only person that knows what's going on? Imagine Kathy being the only person that takes care of all of us. So do not be offended, alarmed, or take anything ill of Kathy not responding immediately. She will respond. She will, she will get back with you, but don't hesitate to use her. There is the ABFM help, some of the routine questions. You can just send an email and ask some of the routine questions, but every once in a while you get something that you really want to talk to Kathy and make sure you've done it right. And she's great. She comes to RAD every few years to give us any updates. She's a wonderful person. She's here to help us. And so make sure kbotner@theabfm.org. That's another email address you need to have readily available, because she is a wonderful resource and she will reach out to you and help you. Okay, so that concludes my slides. Other than a thank you, and here's my email address and my phone number. If you need anything at all, I'm happy to have you reach out to me. And clearly, I just looked at the clock and went over my time. So sorry. I'm glad we answered some questions along the way. Obviously, if you've got any more, is there any burning ones out there? I see there's 7 things in the chat now. Becky, is there any specific questions I need to try to answer, or Pamela? Pamela's got her mic off.
Here. There was nothing else said. I responded to the questions that we had already answered on the chat just to make sure that everybody got the answers.
Okay.
And then it also records it for later on. And then just Ashley saying that she needed to hop off for another meeting. Thank you so much, Cheryl. Good pearls today.
Okay. Well, anybody who knows me knows I talk too much. Pamela's laughing. Yes, so.
We
And
love you, Cheryl. We love
you
you.
know, I
can't
did
ever
this
talk
for a
enough.
long time.
You can't talk enough, and I think this information is such an important piece of what we do, and I think it's very confusing to a lot of people, especially those that are new in their role. And so this is
Yeah.
a great one that we've recorded, and we'll have access to when it's time to do this all over again. People can go back to our website and look at this. So
Yeah, because there is a little bit of a now you tell me, but it will be available. So
we'll be able to see it forever. It will be posted on our AFMA YouTube channel. And so it's awesome that we have these and that we're recording them now so that we can go back and reference them when we need to. So super good.
thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time and attention. I'm serious. Reach out to me, email me, call me. Email's probably better. But I'm happy to answer any questions, share anything I've learned. But clearly I like to talk. So you might get more than you bargained for, but feel free. I'm looking forward. I'm so excited that I get to be part of the agenda for RAD. So I hope everybody's going to RAD and RLS. I will be there, and just super excited, and new faces, old friends. Looking forward to it. So look me up. If you see me, come find me. Okay. Reach out to me.
Oh, you're easy to find, Cheryl. Everybody knows Cheryl. Everybody knows.
I will hunt you down.
Cheryl has been my mentor for many, many years. I joined AFMA in 2006, and I have known Cheryl since then, and she has taught me a lot of the wonderful things that I know. So something Cheryl didn't mention earlier is that she was an AFMA president at one time in her career when she was on the board of directors. So she is very knowledgeable. And if you don't know the answer, just call Cheryl. She knows the answer. And if she doesn't know the answer, she'll find somebody who does. So
well, that's the thing. Yeah.
The great wealth of knowledge. I think this
happy to
connection
help.
that we have, the network that we have we are so lucky in our specialty. I hear that frequently from other specialties. We are so lucky to have this organization and be able to reach out to our colleagues and to share this kind of information. So Cheryl is one of those that is a pillar in family medicine, and she will be forever.
And we will have a QR code on the end of this record or the PowerPoint so that you guys can take the quiz. Okay. We just don't have it yet. So I
was going to say, I did not make my slides.
Actually, I don't think the quiz is this time. The quiz is for the new this is the new coordinators. That is correct. You're right. Yeah. I'm sorry. You're correct.
But I'll add it to the PowerPoint, and we'll put it on the listserv, and we'll put it on the AFMA site. We'll get that QR code out to you guys so you can take the quiz.
Perfect.
How long are you? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
How long are you considered a new coordinator?
Your whole life.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
Forever. No, I would tell. I mean,
usually
it depends. It depends, because like we always say, it takes 3 years. Your first year, everything's new. Your second year, it's like, oh yeah, I vaguely remember that. And third year, you get it figured out. And the fourth year, they change everything and you start all over again. So, I mean, it's there's always new. So don't ever, and that's my biggest thing. Don't ever expect to know everything. It's knowing where to find it, how to find it, and reaching out for help. And, it's okay to say, I don't know, but I'll get back to you, but always get back. And that's the quality difference, is responding. But this is not a case where you say to everyone, or you say to someone, oh, I think it's this way, and they take you at your word. Well, when somebody says, oh, when Pamela tells you I know everything, no pressure for me to answer a question at all,
None whatsoever.
Yeah, but so I'm forever rechecking and double checking, and things change. Like I say, the one thing that is constant in graduate medical education is change. So just know that. So don't ever feel like just because you've been here for 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, that you're supposed to know everything, because you don't, because they change it. So I called myself new a lot longer than I technically was, just because that was a nice out for, gee, I'm not sure about that, but after 15 years, it was kind of hard to say, yeah, I'm new, so
I just pretend I'm new all the time, so it's okay.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. But anyway, thanks everybody. I'm taking your time way past the scheduled time, but I will see you all hopefully at RAD, and look me up, and there'll be some little socializing, right?
Yes, we will be, I had to make sure I was unmuted. We will actually be having a meet and greet kind of the evening before RAD. So if you're around that evening, I'm hoping most of you will be, because you'll be checking into the hotel, and we'll be having a meet and greet. We'll send out details about that in the near future. And then RAD, we will be having our 40th celebration, 40 years of AFMA. That's kind of wild and crazy to say, but 40 years
Yeah.
doing this thing.
Yeah.
So we will be
Yeah.
having a celebration at the end of RAD, and celebrating the 40 years of awesome relationships that we have created and the knowledge that has been shared over the years. So
And Mike, you're right. It's Homer Simpson all over the place, all over again. Yep. But it's my first day.
it's going to be
Anyway.
great. Lots of great information, and it's always a great time to connect with your peers. So super excited to see all of you.
Absolutely. Okay, so
Thank you for joining us, everyone. Hi, Ms.